Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to our very first town hall meeting. This is something new that the town of Abingdon is having to increase our communication with citizens. And just for informational purposes, we can't vote, we can't make any motions, we can't take any formal action during these town hall meetings, but it gives us the chance to address issues that we may take action on at a later date and raises awareness of what's going on. So if anybody would like to know how to get on the agenda for these meetings, that information can be found on our website, I think, or you can call Town Hall and we'll help, or send one of us an email or call one of us and we'll help you get that figured out. Kim, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Austin.
Present.
Ms. Quetch.
Here.
Mr. Webb.
Here.
Vice Mayor Anderson.
Here.
And Mayor Fillion.
Here. Okay, now we need to approve the agenda for our town hall meeting today. Do we have a motion to do so?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anderson. We have a second by Mr. Webb. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, Kim, will you please call the roll for a vote?
I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Austin.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anderson.
Aye.
And Mayor Fillion.
Aye. Thank you so much. So today we have one topic that is up for discussion, and we have Ms. Mary Jennings here. The topic is housing. What can be done to provide affordable housing for residents? So would you like to come forward and address us with your questions?
Well, if I have 15 minutes, I don't want to talk too long, because the point of this is, I think, for you all to actually talk with other people and to deal with, to discuss this. But I appreciate Mr. Cochran sending me information, like that there are 400, I guess you call them housing units, apartments, condos, houses that are vacant in Abingdon, according to the 22 update of the census. Amanda, I noticed, said that she needed time to do her homework, so I hope you all have done your homework. I sent you a League of Women Voters study that is actually 2021, and it was not as up to date as what the Mount Rogers study has been. And did you send that to them?
At some point, yeah. Not sure, it's been a while, but we got that last fall. We also have another study that we're gonna update because the Mount Rogers study was a little broader in scope, and we're gonna have one. We had one that was a grant that was never activated, so we withdrew that grant. We're gonna put in for another one to expand it to get a little more detail, because that grant covers the whole planning district versus the one that's Washington County, and Bristol is really the one that would be a little more detailed. So once we get that, it should hopefully have a little more detail in it.
Okay, and I mean, in doing my homework, I also discovered that actually Shanna Carrico, who's a League of Women Voter member, discovered that the Smith County has done a rather extensive grant, and well, it's supposed to help veterans and senior citizens and disabled and workforce, yeah. People find housing. And I know one thing it said was that if somebody lives in a house for 10 years, then the additional funding, or that they get the house for free. That's my understanding. I'm not sure that that's accurate. But my point is that the Smith County, Town of Marion, and Mount Rogers are doing visible things to help with housing. I also know that Abingdon is not Washington County. So anyway, basically the housing shortage is a national issue. We know that. The vacancy rate for the Mount Rogers area is 1.7, I believe, %. We know that People Incorporated houses have a 300 person waiting list for Abington. I mean, just they, okay, People Incorporated has 5 housing complexes in Abington, and at least 2 of them have 300 people on their waiting list. Anyway, as that Mount Rogers study said, businesses can't expand if there is no housing available. I mean, that's the bottom line that is repeated in Mount Rogers study. We know that there is a high percentage of older residents that at some point will probably need to leave homes and go to one-level houses or whatever. And that we know that people leave Abington because there's a need for high-end senior living. I mean, they go other places because they can't find what they're looking for in Abington. So that's why it's a problem. And perhaps Abington's zoning could be made more flexible to allow for multifamily housing. That's one solution. Another solution might be to develop a land bank, which is an organization that buys land and makes it available at low cost to people with low to moderate income to build a house. And that may be what Smith County's doing. I'm not real sure about that. Local governments can contribute to the financial support of affordable housing by setting up what are called housing trust funds, which subsidizes the development of affordable housing. You could work with the county, because we know that there's not much land available for development of what I'd call apartment complexes, what other people call multifamily developments or something. So there is room in the county. As I have thought for years, it would be nice if Abington could annex a little bit more of the county, but that seems to be a difficult project. Anyway, what I understand from the League of Women Voters is that there are good policies in place in Charlottesville and Richmond. So that's affordable housing, okay? Then, from where I'm coming from, the cost of residential housing. There are a lot of people, I think, this is my opinion, that come from California, Northern Virginia, Florida, and they're used to paying a lot more for houses, and so $1 million is not all that much to buy a house with it. I don't know what the town can do. I mean, but in terms of rentals, is there a way, is the town, well, I'll repeat that. There are 400 housing units in Abington that are vacant. And that may be, I'm not sure about that, but are those vacant sometimes because people are renting them out as Airbnbs? I'm not trying to, I mean, we are a tourist community, so yes, that's not a bad thing. But is the town getting taxes from Airbnbs? This is happening consistently, you think?
Yes.
We've changed our ordinances to try to help that. We've changed them 2 years ago, maybe, with Airbnbs, to try to keep up with that a little better.
Yeah, well, I knew it had been a problem, and I thought you all had done something in that direction. Is there anything else that can be done in regards to residential housing? I mean, people, I've lived in Abington 50 years, or at least, well, between exit 10, because I couldn't afford housing back in 1971 when I came. So I lived in Evergreen Hills for 20 years. But anyway, I have been around Abington for 51 years, something like that. And so it just seems like people who've lived here for a long time are finding it very difficult to be able to afford a house. And I know some of you have recently bought houses and renovated them. So, I don't know that there's a solution to that. I think there may be a solution to what I would call low-cost affordable housing as opposed to high-end affordable housing. And my third point is that I remember probably 30 years ago reading about Lexington, Virginia's problem. They were losing a sense of community because so many of their homes, historic homes, were being turned into businesses. And I do know over the last 50 years that has happened in Abingdon. I don't think it is, there's probably a tipping point, where if every house that you walk along Main Street is a business, you lose a sense of community. And I think you can see that that can happen because there are not that many between, I'm thinking Cummings Street and Pecan Street. That area has pretty much been turned into a business section, which is kind of understandable. But we do need to think about this. I mean, if they're businesses, then there aren't neighbors walking dogs. They're not people chatting about gardening or trimming the roses or whatever. So I think that we need to be aware of this now. How that's going to work, I don't know. People Incorporated is a great source of information, I think. They have 32 properties in Virginia. I mean, all over Virginia. And I didn't know that until recently. So, okay. What can you do?
If I could just speak just briefly on the census numbers, the numbers vary, but when it comes to some of the ones that are showing as vacant, sometimes those are investor homes or sometimes they're second homes. And I know several of them in town that are second homes, and the really smart people want to retire and live here, so they buy them now and then they're going to move into them later, but they're just vacant at this very moment. So there are some of those out there, and I believe the last time I checked on our VRBOs, it's roughly 39 or 36. The number varies on how many we have, but we do have relationships with the VRBO and the stay-at-home or whatever the sites that market that. They know based on the address where to remit taxes to, and they do it automatically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which helps out. I mean, because I think over the years that whole process has evolved, so our treasurer gets checks from them on a monthly basis, so that helps out. So it's not like it's maybe 10 years ago maybe it wasn't as efficient, but now it's pretty operates well. And we do have People Inc. And the Abingdon Housing Authority in the audience because housing is their business, so I wanted to invite them also. Council's aware of some of our challenges with housing, but so I do have them as well. I know last week I stopped over at People Inc. and talked to them, and it is a real challenge because, like, with respect to rentals, they have housing vouchers with the Housing Authority has vouchers, and then People Inc. uses vouchers as well. But it's also a free market economy, and if you're a landlord, are you going to take an $800 voucher that's guaranteed, or would you take an $1,100 cash or $1,100 rental? And unfortunately, sometimes people profit as their motive, and then they take the higher amount. So it's kind of a sliding scale on that stuff. But it really depends. Now, we do have landlords in town, and I mean, I remember I was talking to one a couple months ago, and he told me he had a vacancy, and I got a hold of the chief. I said, hey, you have an officer that needs a spot, and lo and behold, I mean, so it didn't take but a couple minutes, and we had an officer living in town. And the nice part about it was the landlord in particular knew that we needed to have housing that was affordable for our locals, and so they were able to rent the place at a below market rent, which was nice and noble, and, but those folks sometimes are the exception, not the rule, so.
And that becomes a conundrum,
Yeah.
as somebody who owns some rental properties, when the value of housing goes up, and then your properties are reassessed, and your taxes go up, then it costs more to own the property, which means then you have to charge more in rent. Or, for example, if you own a home that's in the historic district and you have to do repairs to the home, those repairs may be more costly than they would be otherwise. And so then you get into the conundrum of, are you renting, you own this property, but do you have to raise your rent so that you don't lose money owning the property? So the economy certainly plays a role. And then also with the Airbnbs, a lot of, and the homestay, or whatever we've called those in ordinances in the past. We've changed the ordinances for those, like the town manager was saying, about taxes, but, also, I know that several of those have now become more of a long-term, or, like a year-long furnished lease situation. I think that has happened. We have several dental residents that are at the Appalachian Highlands Dental Service that are always looking for housing, and I know at least one of those is staying in something that was formerly an Airbnb, and they rented that for a year. And so whenever I talk to people, I always say, you've got if you could just get involved with the residency program at the hospital or with the dental clinic, those are great renters, and they are looking for affordable housing. And so I always try to encourage people to do that, to get on that schedule, so that's something too. But it's also difficult, when somebody owns a rental property, we can't tell them, we have enough Airbnbs, we want you to do long-term leasing, because they get to do what they want to do. So that makes it hard too. And I keep thinking that with that, there's also a tipping point, that at some point we'll get to the point that there are too many Airbnbs for them to be profitable, and they'll return back to, long-term rentals again. So, I don't know, because I don't do short-term rentals, so I don't know what the market is like for that.
Can other people talk at this town hall?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so, we did, recently, we had a LWV program about healthcare, and some of the residents that are at Johnston Memorial said that their rates had been drastically increased in their rental properties. So they were having problems. Would there be a way of providing an incentive through the town for people to lease properties on a yearly basis instead of having Airbnbs? I don't know.
I don't think the town can tell somebody what to do with their property.
I know you can,
Yes,
but you
ma'am.
can encourage them.
Yeah, I just don't,
By
yeah.
providing incentives to do this as
Yes.
opposed to that.
Yes.
I mean, do you know what the rate of the use of Airbnbs is? I mean, are they pretty much kept full all the time?
Well,
or
they're pretty
it's
hard
just
to get
during bar-
information out of. We do get their taxes, but they're very, they hold that close to the vest as far as what their occupancy level is. From some of the owners that I know, they don't have to be rented all the time for them to cover their investment, so it's kind of a catch-22. If you got 1 second, I can tell you, with some of the housing projects we have, because one of the problems that we have is lack of inventory. I checked with a realtor that I know on Monday, whatever the 20th was. She said active houses under contract, we have 9 in the town, and five condos or townhouses. 14 out of the whole town are actually out there on the market and not under contract. And then under contract, you've got 21. There's not a lot of market availability out there.
Right.
But with projects that we currently have in process as far as the town goes, out there off of Fairway and 75, where they have the big piles of dirt that are there, that'll be 53 townhouse type units when those are done. We also have on Whites Mill Road, we've got 19 single family units that are in concept stage right now. We have 72 multifamily on Wolf Creek Trail that's being finalized. It's a fair amount of number. And then the Clink, which has been under construction for a while, that's got 18 short-term rental units in it. And then the Abington Hotel, which is next to Mamma Mia's, they have 20 in there. And that's, Mayan and I actually walked through that last week, and that's probably in the 80% stage. It's coming along. And then we also have a couple other one 20-unit and one 12-unit that are in the conceptual stage right now. So it actually is happening. If you add another 100 units to the housing market, then hopefully that'll free up. I know when I was talking with the developer who's building the townhouses out there, his whole goal was to be able to have a nice product so that the folks that have a lot of life experience will be able to live in those and then free up their houses for their kids to buy from, that kind of stuff. And, and so the whole thing is there is a process, but it's tough because in the last couple of years, it's been exceedingly difficult to get contractors to do anything. And sometimes you get a really skilled contractor, but they're a one-person show because it's really hard to rely on somebody.
Right.
So it's a challenge.
How many total units might be coming on the market relatively soon? Like
Well,
100 and...
So, yeah, this is between apartments and houses, and this is probably 150, give or take. But, this is probably 120 in that range. But that's actually way more than that, but maybe closer to 150. But the nice thing is that stuff is coming, but it takes a little while. But then if you see through some of the market analysis, I know last week I was chamber meeting, and the banker gave us a presentation that was, what they're basically was saying is that interest rates ain't going down. So, which is tough, because you got a lot of people that have low interest mortgages, if they have any mortgage, and they're not gonna move to go absorb a 7% mortgage rate. So there's a lot of different challenges to the market right now. And so,
Right.
And then the other end too, from affordability perspective, is if you live in town, you pay town taxes and you pay county taxes. And so if affordability is the goal, do you want to live here, or do you want to live, there's a lot of different options out there. And I know we have a lot of rentals. And I know with People Inc. and the Abington Housing Authority, do you have any tidbits or anything any ideas of what's going on? Oh, if you could come forward, I'm sorry. The People Inc. Yeah. So there's two of you. Yeah. So Abington Housing Authority is being very artful. So these guys do work in the housing business, so they have a little bit. So.
Okay. And Shanna has a point about housing vouchers too.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jennings, for your kind comments. My name's Brian Phipps. I'm President and CEO of People Inc. I've been with the organization now for about 20 years. President and CEO now for about 2.5. The conversation that you all are having here today is a very similar conversation that we're hearing throughout the Commonwealth, throughout the state. This isn't just an Abington problem necessarily. We're developing housing all the way up in Culpeper County and in Fauquier County, and the conversations there are very similar. I think, last fall, we opened up 22 additional units off of Elementary Drive, which was the second phase of a project that we started about 10 years ago, when I think Mr. Adams was probably with us then. Once we got those units ready for occupancy, we had them fully leased up within a 2-month period, and a waiting list of over 200 people before we even had the groundbreaking. I think that's indicative of, the challenges that a lot of people are facing within the community. And one of the things that I think is becoming much more common is, certainly from People Incorporated's perspective, we've always advocated for affordable housing, especially for the clients that we serve. I think the shift that we're seeing within, certainly our economy is that upper income families are now having difficulty finding housing. And it's really a situation where those conversations are becoming much more urgent because, we all know we need workforce housing, and if you are unable to have young families moving in the community, then workforce and economic development is just that much more difficult to be able to accomplish. So I think that conversation is shifting somewhat, but it is true. Our full affordable housing portfolio throughout all of our different properties, we have over 1,100 properties. The gross rate waiting list for those units are over 3,000 in a bunch of different communities throughout the state. So again, it's not a situation that's just impacting Abington, but I do think that conversation is changing. And I think really one of the primary causes of that is that over the last 20 years, real wages, as adjusted for inflation, have increased about 5%. The cost of housing has increased by upwards of 60%. So, people can't afford to live in the housing markets. And in Abingdon, it's a relatively well-off community. And there are a lot of, higher income homes available, and it's essentially priced out a lot of the people that live here. And again, I don't know that it's anything that you as a council can do to fix that problem. It is very market driven. And I think Mayor Pillion was right. Folks that own rental properties within the community, their goal is to make a profit off of doing that. And you are not going to be able to do that by keeping the rents affordable necessarily. It's just, I think what the market will bear is what you get, and that's everybody's right to move into. But I do think that there are a few creative things, certainly that we've seen working in other communities. We are getting ready right now to begin construction on a 60-unit development in the town of Culpeper, in Culpeper County. We were able to do that project because the county and the town worked together to actually donate us over 6 acres of land so that we could do that new construction project. I think that came after a lot of conversation about what was going on in their community, and I think they understood that they had a growing need for affordable housing. They were seeing increases in homelessness and knew that something had to be done. So thinking creatively about, are there any surplus properties that the town has or that the county has that could be repurposed for housing? I think that's certainly one option. I heard somebody mention land banks a few minutes ago. That those are becoming much more popular throughout the Commonwealth as a way to help control the cost of the land to make them more affordable for families. There are a number of communities throughout the state that are essentially setting aside parcels of land and say, we're going to make this a land bank. It's administered by a third party, often a nonprofit, that says, we're going to continue to own this land in perpetuity. You don't have to buy the land necessarily, but you can own the improvements on the land. So it's a way to promote additional home ownership without them incurring the costs, and it also gives the local jurisdictions a means of controlling what happens with that property going forward, rather than depending on the good graces of people to do what's right. So, I think there are myriad issues, associated with affordable housing in general. It's lack of inventory, I think you pointed out. I mean, it's tanked. And, I've got a 4.25% mortgage, and I live in Norton. And been working and driving to Abingdon for 20 years. And, now that my daughters have graduated from high school and are off to college, my wife and I were talking not long ago. She said, we really should move over towards Abingdon. And I said, I would love to, but have you looked at the housing market over there? So, I mean, and this is my business in many ways. So you look at it and say, why would I want to give up that mortgage, all of the equity we've got to be house poor? And I think that that's a conversation that's going on around kitchen tables throughout our region. So it is a very difficult thing to be able to manage. But I think it is certainly encouraging that you're listening with open ears, because I think that that's really what it takes is for many years, we all turned a blind eye and said, we don't have a housing problem. It's the same thing as saying we don't have a homelessness problem. We don't have this problem or that problem. I think as these conversations become more urgent within our communities, being able to work together in ways that can really promote the benefit of the community as a whole is what it takes to be able to solve this. It does rely on the zoning. It relies on access to land. It relies on permitting practices. There's so much that goes into the development of housing. And the important thing to understand is that it does not cost us any less to develop an affordable housing property. It costs us the same to build those structures as, market rate housing that are out there. The reason we're able to do that is through tax credits and a lot of other incentives, wherein we don't have to borrow as much money, and that's how we're able to keep them affordable. So it's not that affordable housing is an inferior product. It's just the way that those projects are funded gives us a little more flexibility with what we can do on the rental side. Certainly, we work very closely with the town of Abingdon with their Housing Choice Voucher Program to help get some of those vouchers into our units. But long term, I was very happy to hear that there are a number of units that are coming online. We are getting ready to rehab a couple of existing properties that we have in Abingdon right now. They're about 15 years old now, so we're going to reinvest into those properties to preserve them as being affordable. But that's really what it takes. We need to preserve what we have and continue to find opportunities to convert additional units. But again, this is not impacting any one income group, not at all.
Did we, and back to your point about zoning, we made some zoning and ordinance changes not very long ago also to allow more multifamily housing, to build accessory units on existing lots and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's correct. We're
within the
probably,
town.
yeah, we're one of the few that I know of that allows ADUs on any property,
Yeah.
as long as you've got the room for it. And mine, it's up to 800 square feet, and beyond that, they would have to get a special exemption or something. But the nice thing is that if you, like a lot of times, there's a place for mom or a place for dad or whatever, you got a place, like if you had a backyard, you could actually build something that they could stay in and still have their, but that is available. When you look at the census data, we have a whole lot of houses in town that are single occupants. It's just because people live in them their whole lives and they just want to continue to live in them their whole
And
lives.
they're gonna stick there. I mean,
Yeah.
especially as they're, getting a little bit older. I mean, those are their homes. They've been there forever, so you can't really expect those to turn over. But what it's doing is essentially making families that have more means maybe than the lower income levels, they're having to buy up the inventory at the lower end of the spectrum, which is taking that out of the realm of possibility for folks that have lower income. So it's this cascading effect that's just continuing to work its way down. I think, the challenge in Abingdon is certainly the challenge the city of Bristol has and many other communities in that there's a finite amount of land that's available. So you're a little bit landlocked. There's not a lot of places where can you do this. And I think that's really what our focus has been on, repurposing downtown buildings, trying to figure out creative ways to get some additional units into the community. It will require a creative approach, I think, moving forward.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You gentlemen?
I'm Mark Adams. I'm the Executive Director of the Aberdeen Housing Authority, and I don't really have a solution, but I can vouch for the lack of affordable housing around town. We have two housing programs, the public housing and the Section 8 voucher program. Each of those have over 100 people on the waiting list. As a matter of fact, we're not even taking any applications for those programs right now just because our waiting list is so long. I think about 6 months ago, our success rate in giving someone a voucher and having them find a place was about 18%. And we could give out vouchers all day, every day. The problem is, when you give someone a voucher, they can't find a place to use it. They have 120 days essentially to use it, and most of the time they can't find a place within 120 days. And it's not just an Abingdon problem. I talk to executive directors usually a couple times a month with all over Southwest Virginia, and we're all going through the same issues. And I know back before I was with the Housing Authority, I used to build houses, and the cost of land, the cost of development and everything, it's hard to build affordable housing when your costs are so high. You kind of have to pass some of those along. So it's a tough issue, and I don't really have any solutions.
In Charlottesville, the University of Virginia is dealing with a similar situation, and they are trying to find affordable housing. And I know that there's a project, I don't know the specifics off the top of my head, but the university is working on a project to build affordable housing in Charlottesville for their employees and for employees at the hospital, because, their nurses can't find anywhere to live. And so you have a hard time recruiting and keeping nurses and keeping your hospital running if you don't have somewhere to live close by. So it is a problem that's statewide, even in places that are bigger than us. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Housing Authority?
Oh, you're good.
I'm Shanna Carrico, and my sister and I run A1 Self-Storage, and we have quite a few long-term rentals in the area. And when Mary had mentioned that this was going to be discussed, I thought from a perspective of a landlord, we get calls unsolicited every single day. And part of it's because we're known to have affordable pricing. The challenge starts to become when out-of-town companies come in and buy our larger complexes, which has happened in the past couple of years, and that money
Bulk
starts.
storage being one.
Bolt
storage.
has certainly become a challenge. Willow Run and Promised
Yeah.
Landing were sold also to outside companies, and I don't think their names are at the Little League field ever. So, you know, that's a huge challenge for us locally. Anybody that comes in the door, especially youth, we're going to support them, and we pride ourselves on that. But we also work with people in Abington Housing Authority, and we welcome the vouchers. What happens is they come in and we don't have anything available, so we can't kick somebody out to take the voucher. You know, we're open to that. And Dad was a general contractor, and he used to always say, you know, it just got to the point that you can't build it and then get your return on your investment. And that was prior to the last several years, you know, of increases. So what came to my attention, and a friend of mine who's a local business owner is looking and working with Smith County, and they've got apparently 5 different programs right now related to affordable housing that I was unaware of. And when it was brought to my attention, I thought, well, you live in Abington, you own a business in Abington, why would you not be working to do something like this in Abington? Well, there's none of these programs that Smith County is doing exist. And I don't know the details of all of them, but one of them works with their EDA in Mount Rogers as well. And I'm also a member of EDA for the town and have been for 6 years or so now. And I think that it would be an interesting thing to learn more about what they're doing and if it's something that we could look into, because the particular program certainly helps with that first-time home buyer ownership. There's federal money involved. EDA is acting as an administrator for it. I've got a lot of information about it, but this was kind of last minute for me, so I didn't have a chance to read it and completely digest it to speak intelligently about it. But I do think it's something that we may put some kind of a task force together, because I see it. Rents for one bedrooms 5 years ago were $350 that are now $600. You know, it's that much difference. And having grown up here, I moved away and I was in New York City, and you know, the workers of New York City don't live in New York City. They live in the outskirts and they commute. That's where we're starting to see is the restaurant workers here calling and saying, I can't find anything to live closely, and I can't afford to commute 45 minutes back into Abington to work the job I have. So I think we're going to start seeing that really increase significantly. So this is just some ideas that I had thought of as we were talking today.
And Mayan and I have met now 2 or 3 times with the Mount Rogers, specifically on this issue. The programs we're talking about, I can get a summary on them, but some of those are county applicants, and we haven't applied because we're not the county, but they have a different situation going on over there. But they are being very, they're forward thinking on how they're handling some of the stuff. Now, the other end, what they've got over there is the Emory and Henry's medical plaza over there is sapping up a lot of their available housing inventory, so it's causing, it's causing some rate inflation over there as well. So, but we can certainly prepare a summary as to what they're doing over there to see what we could do if there's anything we can tag on with. So, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Brian and Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor. Damus Boudreau. I represent Virginia Housing, the Virginia Housing Development Authority, and I had the pleasure of visiting my good friends, the Good Pastures, who live at Mount Calm, and we had the pleasure of eating last night at the tavern, maybe the best restaurant in town, and speaking with the Vice Mayor. He said we're having a town council, a town hall on housing tomorrow, and I thought how fitting. So a bit of a disclaimer, I do federal and state government relations, I don't do local government relations, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I'm more than happy to put our folks in touch with the town manager and offer a resource. So this is a statewide issue, and the number one problem is inventory, whether it's affordable or whether it's something bigger for folks who are in something small to move up to open it up for somebody bottom to move up to the middle, right? It's all across every income level and every socioeconomic strata, and local governments have a challenge, and they also have some tools on your own from the preservation standpoint. I'm just going to go down a quick laundry list. Assessments, you could perhaps assess affordable properties based on the rents that they are charging as opposed to the value of the property because of its proximity to, say, the interstate or what have you. So that's an easy local tool which might cause less money to flow into your coffers, but would be a preservation tool because the owner would be disincentivized to perhaps sell it. The other thing is statewide, and this is part of the governor's administration's directive, and we at Virginia Housing are working to support that, is the housing economic development piece. So that does include workforce housing, and that does include, you may recall the sadly failed glove manufacturer in Wytheville. And when that was almost going to happen, everyone, we were scrambling, right? And Virginia Housing, we sponsored a summit in Wytheville, which some of you may have attended, to kind of help address that. And I guess, as you know, the project fell through, but it was kind of a wake-up call. Every locality in the land wants to land the factory in your industrial park, but where are those folks are they gonna stay? Three kind of tools off the top of my head, and then I will be happy to take questions or not. One is, and which was alluded to, is the PDC grants that we have done statewide. We did $40 million among all the PDCs in 2021, I believe. And Mount Rogers, I'm sorry, I don't know the extent that we granted them, but the goal of the grants are more units, full stop. So they are doing homeownership initiatives, and I think there's maybe some infrastructure dollars available, so the PDC would be a resource in that regard. Secondly, Virginia Housing, in addition to overseeing the federal low-income housing tax credit, which we award both to local housing authorities and to nonprofit developers such as People Inc., we make grants out of our own resources for planning, feasibility studies, infill development. So, for example, we would give the town, I'm making this up, don't put this in the minutes. Let's say we would give the town $40,000 to hire a consultant to decide where the housing could be best placed and what it would require. That way the onus of planning that is on the consultant, and we're picking up the tab. Also, if any publicly owned land, whether it's a school or a factory, or there's former brownfields and funds to revitalize those. Any publicly owned land, if there's a building on it, we will make a grant to demolish it, or we'll make a grant to study if it can be preserved, or we'll make a grant to stabilize it while you decide what to do with it. So that's just an example of our grant programs. And then the last one, which is little known, and I'm intrigued that no one has bit at this apple yet, and that is the Virginia Resources Authority, which y'all might have familiarity in issuing public resource bonds for infrastructure projects throughout the Commonwealth. They were granted authority by the General Assembly in 2020, I believe also in 21, to issue bonds for housing through like a local government conduit. And we're the ones that issue private activity bonds for housing development. And so when we heard that public resource bonds could be used for the same kind of general area, we scratched our heads. But it turns out, because the VRA is often focused on infrastructure, there could be some bond cap to the town to take care of infrastructure supposedly that would be dedicated to affordable housing. And then we would come in, obviously, in finance, working with a local partner, finance the construction of that at a preferable rate. All kinds of tools. Be very happy to put Mr. Cochran in touch with probably Chris Thompson from our shop, whom I know you guys behind me know. So yeah, really excited to be here. And if you don't know about Virginia Housing, I'm spreading the gospel. So.
I was just going to say, Virginia Housing has been great to the Avenue Housing Authority. You did do one of those grants for us through a strategic planning grant, and they gave us another grant of about $75,000, a capital fund grant. But they've just been great to the Housing Authority and to all the local housing authorities on this end of the state.
Thank you. So happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting in a good work.
Mr. Rudolph.
Do we have any other commentary?
Thank you.
Well, if we don't, I think this was a very informative. I think we all learned something, and I think we all learned about what the needs are and also about what some of the resources are going forward. So hopefully this will get, it's served its purpose and will get everybody's wheels turning. Yes, ma'am.
You might consider giving more than 15 minutes to some sections of the topics of discussion.
Right. And we're still figuring this out, you
I
know.
know.
This is our very first one, yeah.
Well, it
So-
took the League of Women Voters a long time to come up with how to do forums.
Yes.
So I partly came today to sort of encourage the town hall format being done. And I do think it would be helpful if you publicize this a little bit more, like in the whistle, to let people know about it. I think it's been a really great inaugural meeting, so didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Thank
we're
you
so
very
glad.
much.
We're so glad that you came, and we're glad for the topic. We were very, I mean, I learned some things for sure, so my wheels are turning, so I think it was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so everybody can think about this going forward, and maybe something exciting will come of this. So with that being said, I will adjourn our meeting, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.